man of honesty and a man of strength of ideas as well. Tom Hunt, former Tory MP in Ipswich. How are you?
I'm good.
Did you hear Mark Francois? It was really interesting. He said the reason there's animosity, and I get it, is because Farage was screwed. We did never give him. There was talk of a knighthood. He said, and I quote, "We didn't even buy him lunch."
Well, look, I mean, I think the key thing is that we won this huge majority in 2019. There was a massive realignment. We had places voting Conservative that had never voted Conservative
completely
before.
Destroyed it.
And a lot of it because it was Brexit. And
yep.
I was really excited going in to Parliament, and in Ipswich we'd won over communities who had never voted Conservative before, and they wanted things like immigration control. They wanted us to stand up firmly for British values, patriotism, to reject woke, all of those sorts of things. And I mean, yeah, you can say, I mean, things clearly COVID was a huge fly in the ointment, but I don't think we can blame everything on that.
No.
There was a lot of mistakes made, and I've been repeatedly clear that I believe that to be the case.
It's interesting. Well, I mean, one of the things we had Richard Tyson earlier, just to start with reform. In fact, the general sort of view, before we talk about labour and assisted dying, which I know you're central to as well, is you talk about how times have changed. The Tories always talk about COVID, and we talk about the cost of living. I think the voter has changed. I think that there is a confidence amongst the British people to talk about immigration, to talk about extremism, to talk about... And you only have to look across the pond. I don't think I've ever had a response to this show more than the day of Trump's inauguration. Thousands of people all saying, why can't we have somebody in this country, love him or loathe him, and I keep saying it for a reason, not as a sort of anything other than to be honest. There's a lot about Trump I don't like. There's a lot that I wouldn't agree with. But I'll tell you what, he stood on a policy, and from minute one, he's going to enact that. Today, just such a great similar story. Today, Donald Trump, trying to enact these raids on 3 big cities in America every week to grab illegal migrants, chain them up literally and throw them out the country, has decided that he doesn't like the fact that there are officials within the immigration department who are rowing back on his policies, so he's fired them. Today in the United Kingdom, our Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, after, of course, Southport, asked for a report into extremism, didn't like what was read from the Home Office because a bunch of civil servants said two-tier policing doesn't exist, that's just right-wing gargle, we need to do more non-crime hate incidents. She'll never sack those politicians. Somebody said to me earlier, the problem with this country is the civil servants run this country.
I think in terms of
really interesting.
Trump, in terms of Donald Trump, okay, so I've never been one of these never Trump people. I mean, I would have, if I was American, I would have voted for Trump at all the elections he stood for.
Absolutely.
Probably in the first couple of times, a little bit of a, not a great deal of enthusiasm. However, the last election, I would have voted for him with enthusiasm. I think I sort of came to the conclusion that probably to upend the system in the way that he's doing, you need a personality like that. You need somebody who just doesn't care.
Don't we need that in this country?
About what the glitterati thinks.
Does your party understand that the British people look at Nigel Farage like that? They do.
I think, look at what Trump's doing to tackle illegal migration, okay? He did the sort of things that I was calling for when the Conservatives were in government. He didn't hide behind the ECHR. He didn't hide behind various charities and sanctuary cities. Trump just cut through the nonsense, and he's delivering on illegal migration in a way that we did not do because we didn't have the cojones to do so. So I do admire what he's doing. I do look with some jealousy in a way upon the states right now. And it's not just the immigration, it's he sacked all those woke officials and officers and advisors in government. I am a bit jealous of it, and the fact that actually on the Chagos Islands we're looking for Trump to stand up for British interests because our own Prime Minister won't, and we've got Keir Starmer for the next 4 years.
I mean, yeah, the thing is, whenever I have, and don't take this wrong, when they have a Tory on, they always go, you are the nearest, and Mark Francois, you've acknowledged, I mean, I've been very honest with you, is your language, is your gut instinct not nearer to reform than it is to a party? With respect, I still haven't had any meat on the bone from Cami Badenoch. I still don't know what Cami... I mean, she did a speech, Mark said, but I mean, you have to say about reform, you would admit this to me, there's only 5 of them. They create more interest, column inches, than anybody else, and that resonates with the British public, doesn't it?
Look, I mean, things happened in the last 14 years. Communities changed.
Yeah.
As a consequence of mass migration, people are seeing it They're feeling the effects. I haven't given up on the Conservative Party. I certainly haven't given up on Kemi Badenoch either. She's had an incredibly difficult task. She's come in. We've just been pounded like we've never been pounded before. She's finding her feet. I think she's growing in confidence. The grooming gang scandal, I think she handled very well. And actually, by the way, that wasn't the first time she spoke about it. She spoke about it before that. So, one way or another, the right. The most interesting question at the moment is about the right of British politics, and in a sense, that's a good thing, right? We know Labour are busted flush. We know that they are, remarkably, within only 6 months, they're pretty much busted. I saw some of their approval ratings today, absolutely through the floor. The question is, can the right cohere?
Well, it's interesting. So that was going to put you. I'd like to have a clip, but I haven't got it. I didn't think about it. But we had Ben Habib on yesterday, who set up a British PAC. Have you heard about this? Which is a think tank in effect, which is basically going to say to both Reform and the Tories, if this continues, in 4 years' time, 3 parties at 25%, that's 50% of the right against this left government that is, I mean, destroying this country, not just locally and at home, but internationally as well in terms of reputation. How's that going to work? Because in the old days, the Tories, I mean, look, Cameron took the Liberal Democrats. As we sit here right now, Reform's going to beat you in the next election.
Well, the next election is a long way off.
Yeah.
So actually, I think that it's going to be 4 years away.
Do you think he's going to last that long?
Starmer.
I don't.
It's quite hard to get rid of Labour leaders, though. You know, it's actually a lot harder than it is to get rid of Conservative.
There's going to be a financial crisis.
When he's going to come in after that.
I think there'll be a March budget because I think they're in trouble.
But so I think Kemi Badenoch is right to do what she's doing in this key regard, which is that our brand has been
battered,
absolutely battered. We've lost trust with millions of people who previously voted for us on a number of issues, not just immigration, tax, our general standards of public office behaviour, sleaze, all of those sorts of things. She wants to spend the next couple of years getting that credibility back on key issues, building that trust back. Okay?
But she needs to tell people what it is.
And she's starting to do that. And I think if in two or 3 years' time, once she's made some progress on that, there's still this sort of schism on the right, then that's the sort of time to talk about it. Right now, I think she's got to regain that credibility.
Do you, as a Conservative, look at the strides that Reform have made and feel a tinge of jealousy?
I mean, what do I care about? What puts fire in my belly? This country, the fact it can still be a great country. I love this country. I was brought up being told by my late gran that this is the greatest country in the world.
And me, absolutely spot on.
And I have not given up. There's still things about this country that are special. I'm not fatalistic. I do not.
I know, but I'm getting embarrassed. I'm getting embarrassed.
It can always be turned around.
Do you not get embarrassed?
Yeah, I guess, of course.
Our military embarrassed you? The police embarrassed me?
I'm incredibly embarrassed about the current government. Of course I am.
I mean, I've got a government today saying that, let's revive non-crime hate incidents, but they won't categorically create an inquiry into rape gangs because even the police have said that will create multiracial division. I live in a country, or I was brought up in a country, that if you broke the law, it didn't matter where you come from, your religion, the colour of your skin, you break the law, you get nicked, you face the consequences. And there's so much I fear about. Can we talk about the thing that I know is very, very close to your heart? We've talked about that dossier and where the Tories are against Reform. Chris Whitty today, who of course was front and centre during the pandemic, saying the assisted dying bill should not be rushed. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, he's absolutely right, but it is being rushed. And he was also talking about prognosis as well. One of the key things about the bill is that there's got to be a prognosis that you only have 6 months left to live. Of course, we know that is notoriously unreliable. I mean, not long ago, literally a few days ago, I met a gentleman who had been told he's got a terminal illness, and then a few months later he hadn't. They misdiagnosed it. And so much hinges upon that. But I have to say, it wasn't just Chris Whitty. We also had specialists from the palliative care sector, the end of life sector. And one of the key palliative care organisations, within that organisation, 80% of the members oppose the assisted dying bill. And these are the people who know these issues the most.
Why do you oppose it?
Why do I oppose it? Because I think it will create a pressure that will lead to huge numbers of some of the most marginalised and vulnerable people in our society feeling coerced to end their lives prematurely. That is why I'm against it. And actually, this bill isn't just about what it means for empowered individuals. we have to think about what it means for the most marginalised individuals.
So therein, I think you've done that brilliantly, because therein lies the issue. So I can sit here and I can tell you about the old man, a bullish, outspoken 6'4" giant that was 5.5 stone and it was as sharp as the body gave up. When I'm being really honest on this show, I'm always trying to be honest. When I looked through the glass that final night and saw 3 people changing his nappy, I can categorically tell everybody that debates this bill that there is no way on God's earth he wanted to make it through that night. I'm telling you, I know that. You can. That's known to me. But I also absolutely understand that there will be people who are marginalised. I guess assisted dying, it needs huge controls, but I think there needs to be an acknowledgement. It's the old adage, you know, we put animals down. It sounds awful what I'm saying, but my old man had gone. His body had gone, okay? And that would have been his request. And we would be denying him that request. We would say to him, you've got to spend 10 years sitting in a nappy and been fed by a bottle. He'd have just literally wanted to shoot me.
There's a huge...
Do you know what I mean?
There's a huge amount of work to be done when it comes to improving palliative care, improving end-of-life care, social care, etc. But when we create laws and bills, we do it for everyone. And at the heart of that should be consideration for the most vulnerable and marginalised. In Canada, we've heard horror story after horror story. 5%, approximately 5% of all deaths now are euthanasia.
Are they?
And also, it was introduced, death had to be foreseeable. Now I've changed it, so death doesn't have to be foreseeable. So we're seeing more and more people choosing euthanasia for sort of socio-economic reasons, like loneliness, feeling like a burden, these sorts of things.
Yeah. No, I get that. So, but if you're my dad, or you have a terminal illness and it's proven, why can't you make that decision?
But you see,
why can't you make that decision? Why can't my old man say, I'm really sorry, Tom, sorry, Jez, I've done 87 years, I'm checking the hell out of it.
If you legalise assisted dying, you legalise it for everyone.
Yeah.
And it creates this pressure.
But you're looking at it from the angle that the pressure would then be put on people. I'm asking you to look at it the other way and say, what about people like my old man who would have absolutely bitten my arm off to have had an injection put in his arm if he hadn't have passed that night? Because I'm telling you categorically, listen, you're younger than me. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. It wasn't the fact that he was dying, it's the fact they changed his nappy.
There is no easy solution to any of this.
No.
This is difficult because you know why? Death's difficult.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And we try and avoid it as much as we can, but we can't. But for me, the idea that we will have sort of potentially thousands of sort of the most vulnerable people being coerced.
I get that.
For me, that is the greater fear. And also, wherever it's been introduced, there have been horror stories. There hasn't been a place where it hasn't been.
You know more than me.
And also, what is it about a British state and its recent performance that makes us think we're going to be the one exception? When you look at some of the scandals that have happened in Britain, the infected blood scandal, mid-staffs, grooming gangs you mentioned. What is it about the recent performance of a British state that thinks that we are going to be the one exception? My prediction is, sadly, we will not be the one exception, and in fact we could be potentially worse than some of the other jurisdictions that have introduced it.
Let's move on. Nicola in Norfolk. Jez, while I agree with a lot of what Tom Hunt says, I'm afraid I'm sorely disappointed in Kemi, particularly after her comments at the COVID inquiry, still spinning the line that anyone asking genuinely valid questions was actually spreading misinformation. Tell me, please, what Tom thinks of that.
I say on COVID generally, I rebelled. I rebelled on COVID legislation. I voted against COVID passports. I was even as a new MP, I was sort of straining at the reins trying to get these restrictions removed. So I'm not sure about that quote that Kemi was meant. I haven't heard that quote before, but I think she was generally, from what I remember, was fairly sort of pro-business, getting things open again. So, what we do know is that Keir Starmer, etc. I mean, if they had their way, they would have kept us in lockdown for far longer.
That's a very interesting point. I'm only doing this because I think it's really important, because every time I have you on or have a Tory on, people will say, you need to put this to them, and it's not fair after you've gone. Christian, you'd be very direct to you. Jezra, I was a Tory since 17. I'm 56. I voted Tory every election. In my mind, and it's my opinion, in the last few years, they acted like the Democrats. Well, Tory MPs who were part of this swing to the left are in Parliament. I will never, ever risk putting them back into office. Genuinely there, somebody who's voted for 40 years for the Tories says the party, as he knew it, has swung to the left. and he's a paid-up Reform member. That's the issue that
well,
the Tories have.
He is correct. You know, we know that for much of the last 14 years, there are times where, you know, we had supposedly Conservative MPs, you know, masquerading as Liberal Democrat MPs. Yeah. We had people wearing blue rosettes who probably ought to have been wearing yellow rosettes. Like, we know that. And I sometimes would come across people in, you know, and I was like, oh, how am I say part to you? Is it sustainable? Because it's pretty clear to me, and, you know, I think it's clear to Kemi as well.
Right.
From the comments that she's made and the conversations that I've had with her, that I think she knows where the Conservative Party needs to go. And on things like immigration,
but I mean, it's been going within the Tory Party. It would be fair, Tom, to say this has been going on since Maastricht in '97. John Major, all of them, trying to take that party that is traditionally right of centre, whilst doffing your cap, as Boris Johnson and before him did to the Green lobby, or what and I was a Boris fan, but that's absolutely true. But the truth of the matter is, you've then got a party who would look at what the words generic used and go, oh, that's too far to the right. You know, does it know what it is, the Tory party?
If you want to be a big national party, a broad party that wins national elections, you have to have a fairly broad coalition.
But do you? But now, see, this is really interesting for me. Think about Donald Trump. These are my policies, like me or lump me, throw whatever you want to, but this is what I think. Is the Tories' problem that they've tried to be too many things to too many people for too long, and Reform have come along and said, low taxation, we're going to control the borders, strong military, police on the streets, no fear of crime, Bob's your uncle, and everybody's gone, that's refreshing.
I could spend hours and hours and hours and hours going over the last 14 years, and actually the last 5 years I was in Parliament, and spelling out all the different ways in which the Conservative Party let down its voters and didn't deliver and wasn't Conservative enough. I happen to think Kemi's a bit different. I happen to think that she gets it, and actually Kemi will never try and be all things to all people. She's a very straight-speaking individual. And I ultimately, what I think may well happen is, look, we've had 6 months of a Labour government, and look at the damage that they've done.
Dreadful.
Imagine another for 4 years, and it probably, regretfully, will be another 4 years. I know some people will say, oh, something will happen and there'll be an election before then. There won't be. It'll be another 4 years of Labour government, economic damage, social, cultural damage. And I think it's highly likely there'll be a huge sentiment in British society then, we've got to get rid of these people, we've got to get rid of them. And actually, you know, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You know, let's ultimately find a way of getting rid of the Labour Party, and much of the rest of the world is getting people like Donald Trump, these sort of decisive conservative, unapologetic conservative leaders. We need that, right?
If we're at, just to finish as we started, and I'm so grateful, if we're at where we are in the polls in 4 years' time, would you counsel, if you were standing again, would you counsel your party to go into partnership with Reform, or would you unashamedly say, no, this is the Tory party? Because Reform are not going away, Tom, they're not going away.
Well, look, I mean, I
don't believe they're going away.
I think we'd have to look at that situation in 4 years' time. All I'd say is that, you know, I think the country can barely afford another 4 years of Labour government. No. It definitely could not afford. And actually, you know, it'd probably be even worse, because it'd be, if Labour Party do somehow sort of hang on by accident, they'll probably be propped up by all the sort of SNP and the Greens and the Liberals. It'd be an absolute disaster. It'd be a rainbow coalition of doom, and the country would be broken by that. So one way or another, sort of patriotic people in this country who are engaged in politics, who want the best for this country, need to figure out how we get through it. But
you've used a word there, just to, you know, that Trump always throws out, patriots, right? I'm patently obvious to me that this government is not patriotic. I don't think most of them even like the United Kingdom. I don't think they're proud. I think they're globalists. I've always thought that. The Tory party was the party of patriotism. That rug has been stolen by Reform from the Tory party. Genuinely believe that.
The brand has been hugely damaged.
Yeah. Completely agree.
And Kemi Badenoch's come into this situation where we're on the floor, we've only got 120 seats. The idea that in a few months she was just going to wave a magic wand and it would all go away.
No, I'm not saying that, but I think
it will take time.
I think she needs to be a little bit more open, even if she's plotting, listening, thinking, strategizing. I think she needs to say that to the British people. I think the British people want warts and all honesty nowadays. I don't think they care if you get caught with a hook. I'm being serious. I think they do get caught if you get caught with a hooker, but I think they're more interested, and I'm being serious, about paying the mortgage, paying the bills, making sure the kids are safe, getting to see a doctor, doing something about immigration. I said, just to finish, Tom, I said something yesterday, and a few people were like that. Wouldn't it be amazing if a politician could or would stand up in this country. I said it yesterday, Ryan's going to ease off again. This is me, been divorced twice, smoked that when I was 18, had a rap on the knuckles for that, but I'm standing and this is what I believe in. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. If you come with me, there will be highs and lows, but I will keep you updated every single day of your lives. I will mess up and things will be good and things will be bad, but if you stick with me and I ain't taking anything from anybody, I'm going to keep going and we'll get there. If I don't get there, I'll put my hands in the air and walk away, but let's go do it. That's what I want from my politicians.
Well, that's what we want, and we also want flawed human beings.
Yeah.
As politicians, we don't want these bland people who don't have any personalities
and no experience of life.
I mean, I've believe it or not, I've made the odd. I've just occasionally behaved in a way which I might, when I was at university, etc. But
it's not for me to let out on air. I know all about that. We've got the dossier under the table. Tom, it's always a pleasure to come in, mate. And what I love about you is your honesty about what's happened. And yet, there's a lot of Tories who still won't acknowledge it. You and Mark Francois this afternoon have, and we really appreciate you being on. Tom Hunt, former Conservative MP, and I have a feeling he'll be back. You'll be back in 4 years, won't you?
I harbour ambitions to return to Parliament at one stage, at some stage in my life. But
Good man.
Who knows when that is?
Thank you.